Often, we can be too harsh on ourselves when we are reflecting on the past year. Resilience is built through repetition, constantly pushing yourself, overcoming those mental barriers, but also through those tough times. When nothing changes, nothing changes. There comes key moments where you have a choice. It's designed to be brutally tough. Instead of sulking and feeling sorry for yourself, the next week, you're back on the pitch, you're training hard, you're training with purpose. You got to be clear on your identity, you got to be clear on your vision, you got to be clear on your system. That's what you got to do. What is the type of person, the human being that you want to become? Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode on the Coach G Show. This one's going to be different. Normally I have a guest which I'm interviewing, but we have an unbelievable roster waiting for us in 2026. But I felt that it's too important to take some time right now to reflect on the past year. Obviously, I've been blessed with some amazing guests on this podcast and learned some valuable lessons. And I want to use this opportunity to share some of those insights with you. Obviously, we had some great people on here. We had Andy Murray, Anthony Watson, Charlie Famuna, Victor Matfield, Mornay Steyn, Paul Willemse, Owen Franks, just to mention a few. But each one of them was unique. And I've identified some core lessons that I'll be sharing with you guys today, 7 core lessons. But before I do that, I've realized that a lot of you are watching and listening to the podcast but are not subscribed. Please subscribe to the show so that I can continue to grow the show and eventually transition into in-person podcasts. But in order to do that, I need your help. And also, if there's anybody out there who would like to help me with this transition, please let me know. But I would like to take this time as well to thank everybody that has supported me on this podcast, on the Coach G Show, and really looking forward to today's pod. Okay. So there are 7 core lessons that I want to share with you. And the reason I decided to identify these core lessons is because a year has gone by. 2025 is almost done. The time of this recording was 29th of December. And I'm here in Toulouse right now. And I just felt it on my heart to share this with you because often we can be too harsh on ourselves when we are reflecting on the past year. Or number 2, we're not actually learning anything. We're just continuing and doing the same thing over and over. There's a great saying that says, when nothing changes, nothing changes. So I thought I'd take some time and share some core lessons with you. Let's start off with lesson number 1. Resilience is built, not discovered. So the reason for that is because a lot of people talk about resilience. We need resilience so we can overcome those tough times, which is true. But resilience is built through repetition, constantly pushing yourself, overcoming those mental barriers, but also through those tough times, those setbacks, those injuries, rejection. There are so many great examples. I remember one of the first pods was with Anthony Watson, former England international rugby player and British-Irish rugby player. And he had back-to-back Achilles injuries. And something which he shared there, which was very important, is that the main thing needs to remain the main thing. And he spoke about coming back. It was tough. It was hard. And there were times he doubted himself, and it was a bit different. Things felt different. But it's through those times of adversity, that's where resilience is built. When we're in that fight, when we're in that battle, that's when we learn more about ourselves. That's when we learn we are capable of moving forward. We are capable of staying in a fight. And often that is linked to something deeper. That is linked to your vision. That is linked to your identity of the person that you want to become, the version of yourself that you want to become. But I think that is important. When we experience tough times, the most important thing is that we need to know is there's going to always be valuable lessons. And let's be honest, a lot of us face a lot of personal battles. And when we experience those tough battles, it feels like it's the worst thing. And, obviously speaking to a lot of friends and a lot of people in the community, we all have our unique battles and we are all facing our challenges. And that's why it's important to, I won't just say stay positive, but you got to stay in the fight. And that's where resilience is built, by putting one foot forward in front of another. Focus on just having that forward momentum. But setbacks is part of life. Making mistakes, it's part of life. So resilience is built through those tough times. Resilience is built through those hardships, but it's only built when you actually take time to reflect on what happened. Okay, that happened to me. How hard was that? I always refer back to the preseason. There comes key moments where you have a choice. In a preseason, it's designed to be brutally tough. It's designed to be brutally hard. And you have a choice to make. If a session's not done yet, you can, one, give up. You can fake an injury. Two, you can go through the motions. Or three, you can really push your limits, because if you're pushing your limits, you are actually developing your engine. You are creating something different, something unique. You're creating an engine that can resist different forces. You're creating an engine that can perform under pressure. So when it comes to resilience, it's obviously a topic which I love and a topic which I adore, because there are so many great stories where I can share with you where I had moments of resilience, where I had to overcome certain things. But resilience is built in those moments of adversity, those tough times, but also the conditions that you create for yourself, pushing forward, getting out of your comfort zone. And I'll be honest, I had some moments of resilience where I tried different things in the last few months. Some of it failed, some of it worked. But what was great is by being consistent and having a plan and having a system, it allowed me to identify those key moments. And resilience is built over time, it's built through life experience. So, no matter what happens to you in life, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a coach, and let's be honest, coaching in life is not easy. Your team is not doing well. So, what happens? All the pressure's on you, all right, getting a lot of criticism, but still you got to find a way to come up with a plan. You got to find a way to find that solution. And in that moment, you are building resilience. You were a rugby player, you probably had the worst game ever. But instead of sulking and feeling sorry for yourself, the next week you're back on the pitch, you're training hard, you're training with purpose, you've identified your clear work ons. In that moment, you're building resilience. You're building resilience in a training session where you're pushing yourself, going above and beyond. So I do agree. And this is something that has come through with a lot of the guests that we've had. We've talked about resilience. Joe Gray, former England hooker. And there was a time in his career where he didn't have a contract. And what did he do? He contacted the head coach of Saracens and said, listen here, I see you guys are needing a hooker. I'll come train. You don't have to pay me. I just want to train. I just want to stay there, fit, and be part of a rugby team. And eventually went on, if I'm speaking under correction, he won a premiership and he won a Champions Cup that year. And that's an unbelievable story. So take time right now and look at those tough moments and ask yourself, what is the lessons that, and also identify those small wins. Identify that, okay, that was a tough situation, but I came out on top. Or I discovered that I have something different. I've discovered that I'm capable of doing that. So that's lesson number one. Resilience is built. It is not discovered. Lesson number two, identity comes before performance. Okay, I'll repeat that again. Identity comes before performance. The reason I spoke about this lesson, because all the different guests that we've had on this podcast, they were all unique. They were all different. But it's about being true to yourself, being true to the person that you want to become, that version of yourself. I'll always talk about when I was a rugby player, when I was girth throw, I wasn't as confident. I wasn't that ambitious. But when I switched, when I create this version of myself, G was someone that wanted to chase his goals. G was somebody that was going above and beyond, but was willing to do what was necessary. So identity comes before. Why is this? Because if you're not clear on who you want to become, then it's not going to last. Often we are focused on what we want to achieve. That is important too. Don't get me wrong, because for years I was fixed. Vision is important. It's the most important. Without a vision, you can't achieve your goals. And that still remains true. But where I've kind of shifted my mindset is that if you're not clear on the identity you want or the person that you want to become, that vision and the goals, it means nothing. And I'll be honest with you, there was a time that I kind of lost myself. Obviously, I pursued becoming a professional rugby coach, and it's still something which I'm pursuing today. But in that moment, my social media presence went down. I stopped being myself. And that's why it's become so important for me to rediscover myself, rediscover my identity, asking myself those tough questions. What version of myself do I want to become? And that will dictate our habits. That will dictate our mindset. My dad always says your attitude determines your altitude. And when it is clear on who you want to become, everything falls into place. The vision, the goals, the system, everything. So you got to ask yourself, who do I want to become? What do I want to achieve? What does that identity look? And I spoke about this on previous podcasts and previous community calls on school. So be clear on that. What is the type of person, the human being that you want to become? What does it look like? What are you going to be achieving? And you got to chase that. All right, lesson number 3. Elite teams are built on trust and shared ownership. So I've been grateful to have some of my previous teammates and also previous coaches here on the podcast from the Bulls. And something that comes through, and not just that, but also some great rugby players. That's some All Blacks World Cup winners here on the podcast. And it comes down to this. Elite teams are built on trust and shared ownership. It's not just about having a great head coach or about having star rugby players. It's about having a team that is aligned. It's about a team that believe in a certain vision, and that the culture and the environment is created where there's a sense of belonging, where there is trust and full on accountability. Players, coaches, staff that is willing to go above and beyond. And a great example of this is obviously looking at the Springboks this year. It's unbelievable, what they have achieved, and I know there are criticism on the box as well, and I know we as South Africans, we do take a lot of flack, especially when we are proud. Sometimes we do tend to go a bit above and beyond and be a bit too much. We need to keep that humility going as well. That's very important. But the Springboks is a great example of identity, in terms of what you're doing, but also coming down to lesson number 3, elite teams are built on trust and shared ownership. And as you can see, that coaching staff of the Springboks with Rassie Erasmus and his team, they are sharing the load. They are working together. The players are taking responsibility. The players are putting in the graft. They're doing their homework. So elite teams is built on trust. So I want to talk about the podcast episode with Basil Karasis, and it was great. Basil was, a crucial person in my career as well. He brought me back from the dead. He brought me back from times when I was unfit and overweight. And when I asked him on the podcast, Basil, you were behind the scenes, the Bulls, what made us so great? And he just said, it came down to that mutual trust. It came down to that mutual trust. You guys trusted us and we trusted you. And that is so important. And give you an example, what is trust? Trust means you have an off weekend. You're a rugby player. You shouldn't be going out and picking up 3 kgs. All right? Then you are breaking the trust. He's putting on a hard work. The trust example of that, Victor Matfield spoke about running on Christmas Day back in the day. We had a session to do on Christmas years ago. I think it was in 2006. And we had to go out on the run on December the 25th. But trust is very important. Basil got a task from Heineke Meyer to design a preseason training camp. It was designed to be brutal, designed to push our limits, to push our thresholds. And he did it. And he spoke about the time we ran, I think it was 4 bleep tests that we ran. So obviously we thought they were crazy by doing that. But at the end of the day, we were building resilience. We were building our energy. And that would serve us later in the games in the 2007 Super Rugby final, where we won it in the last minute, where Brian Abana scored that try. But it started with trust. We as players backed them. And I remember there was a conversation I would have with Heineke Meyer. He always used to take me off just after half time and bring on Jaco Engels, who's also a great friend. And, Jaco, if you're listening to this as well, I just want to say thanks to you as well through all the years. You really pushed me at training. And unbelievable lucid and unbelievable human being. And Jaco would always come in the second half. And when I spoke to Heineke, I want to play long. He said, you need to understand the team is more important. You got a job to do in the first half. Jaco brings something different in the second half. And that's, you need to trust me. And he asked me this question, do you trust me? I was like, yes, coach, obviously. He's like, do you want to play for the Boks? Yes, I do. So trust is very important. But coming down to shared ownership, you need to, I always say, coaches is responsible for 50%, of performance, and players is responsible for 50% of the. It's so easy to blame a coach or to blame a player. It's about shared ownership. And at the Bulls back in the day, that's what we had. We had leadership with Morne Steyn, Fourie Dupré, Victor Matfield, Wynand Olivier, Gary Botha. I was a leader. I wasn't part of the tactical team. I was more part of the aggression team, the motivational team. We all had our different roles. Were wearing different hats in the team. And that's so important when you're building an elite team, is understanding your role, understanding your place in the team as well. Because I often see when people are trying to explain to others, this is what you should be doing, you're not doing your job, you're not doing this. There's a difference between keeping each other accountable and where you're explaining to people, right, this is what you should be doing. Now, that was the key. Those leaders, they represented our team. They were working hard. They were working on the strategy. They were speaking and communicating to the coaches. But the goal was that we become an unbelievable team, a great team. And our goal in 2000, or our vision in 2006 was to become the best club rugby team. And that's exactly what we did. And if you also look at the All Blacks, the way they worked with Tana Umang, if you looked with Conrad Smith, Owen Franks, Richie McCaw, Dan Carter, they had all these unbelievable players, Manonu. These guys all took ownership. There was shared ownership. They each had a role, and that allowed them to achieve something great. So this is something that has come through over and over. It's a recurring theme with all the elite performers and World Cup winners that I've had on the podcast this year, that you've got to have trust. If you don't trust your teammates, if you don't trust your coaching staff, and if you're not taking ownership and you're not staying accountable, performance will not happen. You cannot achieve performance. All right? Trust is not just motivational. It's operational. That is very important. So that was lesson number 3. Elite teams are built on shared ownership. So lesson number 4. Process always beats outcome. So why do I say this? Yes, always you got to chase your goals, which is true. You got to chase the version of yourself that you want to become. You got to be relentless. You got to go above and beyond. You really got to push your limits. But when we are outcome focused, sometimes when we don't achieve our goals, we tend to be very disappointed. We tend to become reluctant. We start to doubt ourselves. An example of this, I mentor a lot of players, not just around the scrum, but just helping them managing their rugby careers as well. So when the players is only focusing on having dominant ball carriers, winning the gain line, putting in big hits and dominant scrums, and they don't achieve it, then they feel disappointed. So what I always tell you got to stay obsessed with the process. You got to be consistent in the process, because if you decide, or if you define the right process and you believe in it and you're doing it consistently, eventually the outcome will take care of itself. The results will take care of it itself. So if you got the right habits, if you got the right process, and you're doing it every single day, every week, and on a monthly basis, you will achieve your goals eventually. And yes, obviously, sometimes you do need a bit of luck, especially if you're a young, ambitious rugby player that want to break it into a professional game. It's not always that easy, but you got to trust the process, because sometimes it takes us longer to develop certain skill sets. Sometimes it takes us longer to find our rhythm, to find our flow. If you're a coach and you're trying to transform your team, it's not just one video session or changing the game plan or changing the training that week that will completely revolutionize your performance. No, it's a process. You got to put certain things into place. You got to work on it for 4 to 6 weeks for it to become something which is sustainable or transformational. So process is key, because if you got the right process, that will reduce anxiety. It will better help you manage pressure. That is key. I'm not always, but in my journey, whether it's a player as a coach, I've always had issues with weight. So I'll always bring this up. But 2000 or 2006, 2025, this year, when the Springboks beat Ireland, obviously great time, and with all the test matches going on, watching the box, have your brandy and have your snacks. And there was a time I kind of let go. And then I reset. I identified the process. I redefined my operating system. And this is something which I've introduced into my mentorships, the athlete's operating system and the coach's operating system. So this is your vehicle that helps you to drive forward. This is your vehicle that helps you to turn your vision into a reality and brings you closer to that version of yourself that you want to become. And all I did was, one of my outcomes or the goals that I put into place, I need to weigh 115 kgs. And I was 126 kgs, which was heavy, 126.6 to be exactly. So last week, I was 120 kgs, which was great, was brilliant. And obviously now I picked up a little bit of weight after Christmas. So I'm 122, so I need to lose that again. But all I was doing, I said, okay, what do I need to do each week? I need to train 5 times a week. What do I need to eat? I'm going to stay focused on my ketogenic nutrition system. That's what I got to do. Got to get good sleep in. I got to hydrate, and I also need to make sure that I'm finding balance between work and family. So that's my operating system. But also my operating system means priming myself in the morning, having fixed shutdown times in the evening, and not, how can I say, indulging in the things that I shouldn't, like binge eating or binge watching series on Netflix. And when I do that, I actually take a note of it. And a great system which I use is called the bullet journal method by Ryder Carroll. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But be focused on the process. Be obsessed with the process, and the results will take care of itself. And this is with everything. Whether you're a purpose-driven human being, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a coach, this is what you got to do. Process always beats outcome. And that's lesson number 4. All right, let's move on. Lesson number 5. Growth requires humility. So, my dad always used to say, humble in victory and gracious in defeat. So, humility is key in everything that you want to achieve. And all the amazing people that I've had on this podcast, the humility comes through. I go back to Anne-Lee Murray when she spoke about when the team came together, I think was it 2018? I'm not mistaken, or 2017, not sure. But that's when Rassie and his team came together. And they had this phrase, everybody carries his own bag. In Afrikaans, it's like, elke persoon dra sy eie tassie. And what it came down to is that everybody's got to carry his own, and nothing gets done for you. And that was the mindset they had with players. Players need to pitch in, and also with the coaching staff or the backroom staff of the Springboks. If you have free time, you're helping others, and you got to take care of yourself. It's not about being in a privileged environment. You got to carry your own weight. You got to carry your own bag. And that came through. And then the same, the example of Victor Matfield. Victor Matfield, post-rugby, he was at this function. And he was getting involved in the business. And there was a lot of people coming to guest. And being the person that he was, Victor Matfield, one of the Springbok greats and legends. And he shared the story because he was a bit nervous. Obviously when we're done with rugby, when we talk about rugby, we are fine. When we start to talk about other topics, we tend to get uncomfortable because we realize we don't have a lot of knowledge on other areas outside of the game. And what he did was, in order to occupy himself and not feel so vulnerable, he started, putting out chairs and backing it out so that he didn't have to spend, because he saw some of the workers, they were putting out the chairs and getting the venue set up. And he did that. And the director of the company that he was working with saw this. And because of this, he decided to make Victor CEO. So reason for that was because Victor had the humility, being the person, instead of having an ego, he was capable of putting out the chairs, packing out the chairs and getting the venue set up. So humility is very important. We we can achieve a lot of things. But if we don't have that sense of humility, we go off track. And I'll be honest with you, as a rugby player, there were times in my career where I was a bit arrogant, and arrogance can take different forms. It can be overconfident, and sometimes you just got tunnel vision and you're not really taking in everything which is happening around you. And a great example of that was Gary Gold. So Gary Gold used the word park your ego. So what I like about this, park your ego, means, you got to put your ego aside. How often have we seen in teams or in life where ego disrupts everything, where it's about I'm right, or the person in front of you is trying to do everything in their power to show they're right. And I've been in environments where it's happened like that, and it's toxic. But to give you context where Gary mentioned this, if you're an ambitious coach, if you're a young coach and you want to achieve great things, you need to park your ego. That means you need to start at the bottom so you can eventually rise to the top. So if you need to go out and do amateur coaching, and this is a lesson that I've taken into place, currently helping a Federal 2 team here in France, giving them some guidance on their performance. Obviously I've got ambition as a coach, as a rugby coach, to coach at the highest level, but you got to park your ego. And that's what I'm doing, and I'm enjoying the process. It allows me to evolve as a coach. It allows me to develop as a coach, and also to continue to train to be a coach, which is very important. But humility is key, because arrogance and your ego can blind you. It can stop you from making the right decision. It can stop you from being on the right track. And you need to acknowledge that. Humility is key. Humility allows you to grow, because when you do things well, or when you achieve success, you don't allow yourself to blow up, or that head to blow up your melon, as they would say here in France. You got to stay grounded. You got to remember where you come from. You got to acknowledge the people around you, which is very important. So that is key. That is key. Growth requires humility. So lesson number 6. Transition matters as much as careers. The reason I'm sharing this, because we've had so many great rugby players on here, and there's a lot of recurring themes that keep on. We all struggle when our careers are over. Some struggle most than others because they've attached too much value to their identity as a rugby player, and something which is becoming true as well. Wearing that jersey doesn't define you. That doesn't really showcase the person that you are. So the transition for each rugby player, it's tough. It is hard. But we learn certain unique skills which allow us to apply that into the workplace. I'll give you an example. As a rugby player, we receive a weekly program, right? This is what you're doing. You got a weight session, you got your video sessions, you got a training session, you got a split session. Everything that you are doing in the course of that week is helping you to perform, is helping you to achieve your goals, and to eventually win that titles, win those trophies. And I've taken on this approach. We all know the phrase of tactical periodization is being clear on how we need to manage our workload so we can optimize our performance. And this is something which I apply as a coach today, and as an entrepreneur, and as a podcaster. I need to be meticulous with my planning. I can't just wake up the next day and say, okay, right, what should I focus on today? No, what I did was last night, which was Sunday evening, 28th of December, I took time, I reviewed my whole week. I looked at what I was doing, or what I did in the week, what was good, what needs to be improved on, what should I stop doing, what are the key goals for the week, when am I doing what, taking into account that Wednesday will be New Year's Eve, so that will be a half day. So I plan my week. I know exactly when I need to do what. I'm managing my mental load. I'm focusing on finding times of balance. But I do know if I do those things in the week, that will help me to achieve my goals by the end of the week. But what I would advise rugby players is that, most importantly, while you're playing, build quality relationships with your sponsors, with people in the club, because that skill set and that connections that you build will help you in life. A great example of that is Brian Abana. Brian, a great human being, still humble as always. And he built his own unique brand as a rugby player, and that helped him to create something great after rugby. But as rugby players, we need to know that we develop certain skills as athletes that can be transferred. We have this ability to build teams. We have an ability to explain to other people what shared ownership looks like. We explain to people what trust is. And often in the corporate space, we see people are trying to, how can I say, screw each other over, trying to disrupt people, stop people, ego comes in, people are selfish. But if you have a rugby player, someone that has the core values of respect, honor, humility, and you got someone like that in your team, it's massive. But rugby players need to know the transition part is always going to be tough. It's always going to be hard. You can do all the prep work that you want, but you need to accept it's going to be a period where you're going to rediscover yourself. You're going to rediscover you would have had a certain identity as a rugby player, but you're going to have a completely different identity as a purpose-driven human being post-rugby. But the transition matters. That period, that's where you rediscover yourself. That period is where you learn and where you evolve. So transition is key, and even myself, I'm in a transition phase right now at this moment. I recently stopped coaching at La Rochelle in the summer, in June 2025. And the last 6 months has been unbelievable, to be honest with you. There was a transition period where it was tough, all of a sudden not having a program. I need to reset my own program for the week, the planning for the week. I need to ask myself, okay, so what am I going to do in the period while I don't have a coaching job? I launched a podcast in February. I put all my focus on that, launched a school community, which has been unbelievable. I'm talking about that in a bit. But in that transition period, I rediscovered myself. I rediscovered Coach G, the person that I really am, the person that I want to become, that person that is driven and inspiring people. And I'll be honest with you, even when I started doing the podcasting again, I wasn't always comfortable speaking, and even now I'm speaking way too much. But that transition period, we all experience it, whether you are changing jobs, you are working with a new team, that transition matters. And we need to rely on what we've achieved in the past to give us confidence, but we also need to focus on what we didn't do so well, our setbacks, our mistakes. We kind of need to reframe it. That makes us stronger. Okay, I'm going to move on. Lesson number 7. Pressure is a privilege. This was something which was shared with us by Babal Walacha, which was unbelievable. And I think the reason for that is pressure is a privilege. If you're experiencing pressure in high performance, that means you're in the right environment. Let's be honest, you're always going to experience pressure. If you're not experiencing pressure, that means you are in a comfort zone. That means you are slowing down. Pressure is what kind of I won't say define us, but kind of forges us. It's turning that rough diamond into something amazing, something beautiful. I can tell you stories, of big games. I remember 2010, before the game against France. And I remember the previous year was horrible. It was atrocious. I had a poor year and I got smashed by Castro Giovanni against Leicester Tigers. And I remember before that game, I was like, oh my goodness, please don't mess this up. And then on top of that, I had Peter de Villiers, the Springbok coach, that came to me and he said, right, G, last year you were shit. This year you were less shit. Don't go fuck it up and don't embarrass yourself. Imagine that. The pressure was on. But you know what? I excelled under pressure. And even today, when I'm under pressure, I excel. Whether it's a deadline, whether it's preparing for a seminar. I remember, when was it, last year at some stage, I did a 2-day seminar in Spain. And I remember getting up at 4:30 in the morning. I had 1 or 2 things I needed to complete to be ready for that whole day, and the pressure was on. But I managed to make the right tweaks, make the right shift in order for me to actually execute a great seminar. But pressure is a privilege, and it's all about managing that pressure. And that's why I believe having the right systems in place as coaches, as athletes, as purpose-driven, helps us to deal with it. A great way for me to deal with pressure today is breathwork, it's meditation, NSDRs, journaling, focusing on other things, positive distractions. But if you're in a situation where you're experiencing pressure, that means you're in high performance. And you got to ask yourself, what are the performance habits that I need to have in order to manage this pressure, in order to excel under pressure? We all in rugby, we always talk about BMT, big match temperament. It's about having an ability to perform when it counts, when the chips are down. Talking back to BMT, Morné Steyn, 2009. Francois Steyn was supposed to take the kick, the penalty to win the Lion series. And he went to John Smith and he said, John, give me the ball. I got this. He was confident. He came off the bench. He took on that responsibility. He didn't hide from it. He embraced it. We got to embrace pressure. Pressure is a privilege, but you got to prepare for it as well with your habits, with your routines, with your processes, with your operating system. Your systems is key in everything that we do. Okay? All right. Okay. So that was the first part, the 7 lessons that I wanted, just going to summarize everything. So lesson number 1, resilience is built, not discovered. Lesson number 2, identity comes before performance. Lesson number 3, elite teams are built on trust and shared ownership. Lesson number 4, process always beats outcome. Lesson number 5, growth requires humility. Lesson number 6, transition matters as much as careers. Lesson number 7, pressure is privileged. All right. Pressure is a privilege. Okay. That's very important. Okay. So just to kind of finish this off, because I don't want to keep you guys too long, but to finish on like some of the things that I've learned this year. I think, obviously this has been an unbelievable journey for me. And I just want to say once again, thanks to everybody that supported me, whether it's on social media, on the podcast, and especially in the school community. I'm really grateful and really appreciate every single one of you. So a few key things that I've learned this year on a personal journey is, number 1, you got to embrace your true self. You got to really be yourself. Don't just create a fake identity. Be the real you. Because when you are embracing your true self, that's where everything flows. That's where you are chasing your goals. You are finding, we'll never be happy with everything, but at some stage you need to, in French you say reconnaissant. So that means you got to be grateful for who you are, but you got to embrace your true self. My nature as a human being is to share a message, to inspire people, to help people in any way that I can. That's something that drives me. Number 2, reconnect with your vision consistently. So this is very important because you can create a vision and then sometimes you put it away, it's in a notebook and you never look at it again. And I've done that. I'll be honest with you. I know what my vision is, but taking time to look at it, that's why I write it down in my notebook and a great tool, bullet journal. So I keep track of everything and I constantly revisit it on a weekly basis, not always a daily basis, but I know in terms of what I want to achieve. My vision is to be strong, fit, and focused. So what does that mean for me? Being strong, fit, and focused means somebody that is taking care of his physical, mental, and emotional health. Someone that is productive, somebody that's ambitious, somebody that wants to achieve great things. You got to reconnect with your vision because sometimes you are going to drift and sometimes you're going to go off track, and that's okay. And that's why your vision is so important. Your vision allows you to stay accountable. Your vision reminds you of the version that you want to come, but don't forget about your identity. Okay, number 3, the power of community. So I was fortunate enough to grow up in a town called Paul, and unbelievable community, the community I grew up in, the church, and Boys Eye. And because of that community, I eventually evolved into the rugby player that I became, and even later in life in Bloemfontein, having my people around there, having my good friends Chris and Rodroy Ioannidis. Those guys really helped me a lot, and community has always been there for me. And this year, I'll be honest with you, I started a community on school. And I'll be honest with you, I wanted to create a space where people can share their wins, share their losses and the disappointments. But I never imagined that it would be take on a life of its own. When we started out the community, there was like 12 people in it. Then it like rocketed to 100 and it stagnated there. And today we're almost close to 800 people in that community. And I'm not driven about pushing the numbers in the community to be thousands and thousands. It's about the connections. So the power of community, what I'm sharing, this is an online community which we have created. I say we because I started it, but the actual creation of the community comes from the members, comes from the people that are showing up on a daily basis. So in this community, people are sharing their wins, people are sharing their losses, people are asking questions. Some members is sharing their knowledge and their experience. And some members are keeping me accountable, asking me certain questions and keeping me on my feet. But what we have created is something unique on school. And proper relationships have been forged. We are a few members that are constantly present, constantly sending each other messages and helping and inspiring us. I talk about some of the members, and I don't want to single everybody out, but you got key guys like Ronnie and Charlie and Byron. You got Kevin, you got Jake, you got Hassan, you got so many great people, and I'm not even mentioning everybody. Everybody's unique, and everybody is focusing on contributing something towards this community. And this community has reignited the flame for certain. One coach, he just mentioned, this community has reignited my flame. I've become a better coach. The feedback that we are getting from community members, their teams are doing better, their players are doing better. Everything that I share and that the community members share in that community, it's been amazing. So if you're not in the Coach G Level Up community, check that out. The link is in the description in the podcast, or even better, on my personal page on Instagram. Just DM me the words community and you'll get an automated link. Okay, number 4, going off track. I already touched base on this. I think it's important to understand that going off track is okay. It happens. I go off track. I've gone off track in the last 6 months. I've lost weight, picked up weight. There were times I was more productive than others. But as long as you are capable of identifying that you are going off track, that's the most important thing. If you don't even realize you're going off track, that's when you're in trouble. But when you know you've gone off track, and how do I do this? Let's say, for example, last night, my daughter made some tiramisu, and I was supposed to have a clean day of eating, and she was so excited about the tiramisu that she made, and I had to have a bite. But I made a note of it. Okay, you had the tiramisu, you need to take it easy, you need to have clean eating the next day or the next few days. But I do that in a form of journaling, aligning myself with my goals in terms of what I want to achieve. All right, number 5. I think this is something which I want to talk about, and I've learned the power of the review. Whether it's on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, the power is of the review. And to facilitate it and make it so easy is I use the bullet journal method by Ryder Carroll. So that means you're just writing down bullet notes every day, writing down key events, tasks that needs to be done. And with each bullet journal, you need to set intention in terms of what you want to achieve. And that's exactly. And I started this practice in March in 2025. And it has allowed me now to have about 9 months of data, my wins, my losses, and I'm reading it like a book. And yes, sometimes my handwriting was bad, but it allowed me now to do a proper review and actually take some time for reflection. And I'm not doing this just because it's the end of the year. It's because I'm just acknowledging where I started and how I've evolved over the last few months. And I remain with what I say. Please do not set New Year's resolutions. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't last because there's hype about it. It's a trend. You got to be clear on your identity. You got to be clear on your vision. You got to be clear on your system. That's what you got to do. And all I'm doing right now is just I'm reviewing my system a little bit. I'm identifying my wins, what I did well, because sometimes we forget what we did well. Sometimes we forget what we have achieved. But most importantly, when you're doing the review, and in this case now, it's your really review, identify your wins. Identify your wins, but also identify your work-ons. So why do I use the word work-ons? I'm not talking about failures or mistakes or setbacks. Identify the work-ons, like what do I need to work on? So you can, for example, you can say, I binge eat on weekends. So the work-on will be cleaner eating habits on the weekends. So those are the things. But also, you need to reframe failures. Often, when people are reviewing their past year, they are focused too much on the failures or the mistakes. That wasn't good enough. That was stupid. There was shit. No, you got to identify the wins, reframe those failures, identify your work ons. All right. So for me, growth, it lives in the reflection. Having an ability to go through your notes, and I did this last night as well. I reviewed my week, and it was funny because obviously it was Christmas and Christmas Day and Christmas Eve. Ate way too much, but you know what? Enjoyed it, and I looked at it. There's so many great moments with the family, spending time with my missus, with the kids. It was unbelievable, and looked at what I did, what I worked on. What could have been better, but taking that time. The power is in the review. Too many players, too many coaches don't review their performances sufficiently. And I'm not talking about a game. As a rugby player, are you really looking at your performance? Are you really looking at everything? What are you doing in the week? What are you doing when you're at home? What are you doing at training? Not just the actual game. And as a coach, are you reviewing your performance in terms of, did I give the right content to the players? Did I provide them with the correct session? Okay, so that's something which I've learned as well. I do a daily, a weekly, a monthly review, and I write it down. I keep track of it because that is very important. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share with you guys. Those are the 5 lessons that I wanted to share. And number 1, embrace your true self. Number 2, reconnect with your vision consistently. Number 3, the power of the community. Find yourself, become part of a community, whether it's online, whether it's in your own community. Number 4, going off track is okay, as long as you are capable of identifying that you've gone off track. Number 5, the power of the review. Don't just do a yearly review, do a weekly, a monthly, a quarterly review. Be conscious of where you're at. Be conscious of what you have done and what you've achieved. Okay, so I know now, 29th of December, everybody's gearing for New Year's Eve and everybody is getting ready for New Year, and it's all the same. I hear this so often. I'm going to start in January. I'm going to start in a new year. You got to start now. Even though if we are 3 days out, 2 days, not even. Start now. Start today. Decide now what type of human being you want to become. What does your identity look like? What is your vision? What is the system that will be required for you to achieve your goals? And what I would recommend is start it simple. Start small. Often we strive for perfection. Often we try to go from one extreme to another where we've did nothing and now we're trying to do everything. Just choose 1 or 2 things to work on that you want to do better going into the new year. Focus on 1 or 2 habits, whether it's sleeping, whether it's nutrition, whether it's training. If you're a rugby player, for example, less gaming in the evenings, maybe find dedicated time on your off day, playing in the day instead of the evening. And as I've mentioned earlier, define or clarify your identity, your vision, and ask yourself, what are the habits that will be required for me to achieve those goals? And I think the key thing is, which you need to realize, is that perfection kills momentum. If we want to be perfect, then we stop, we abandon. All you got to do is you just got to start. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just start. Just step up to the line every single day. And some days you're going to have good days and bad days. You're not going to have those PB days every single day. And sometimes it might be once every month or once every 2 weeks. But you got to track your process. You got to track your journey. And I advise, and I'll be honest, there was a time I wasn't a big fan of journaling because writing down our thoughts and our feelings, it's stupid. But I'll tell you this, by writing every single day in my journal, I got 2 journals. I got the bullet journal, and then I got my morning pages journal. So my morning pages, I write out 1 to 3 pages on how I'm feeling, what I want to achieve, what I want to do, anything that comes into my mind. And my bullet journal is there to keep me accountable and help me stay on track in terms of my goals and what needs to be done, my daily priorities. But also, which has been great, I've got like 7 journals from this year alone. I started off with the pocket journal, small one, which is great, and now I've transitioned into your A5 journal. See how that goes. But I'm actually in reading my journals like a book, looking at key moments, what went well, my wins, my disappointments, the mistakes that I made, are reframing everything. And it allows me to have a clear plan. It allows me to see where I went. It allows me to learn more about myself. So I know exactly what I need to do to turn everything that I've been working on into a success. It's going to take time. I'm clear on my vision. I'm clear on my identity. I'm clear on the operating system that is required to achieve that. Okay. Wow. I went on way too long for this podcast. That was not the goal, but I had so much that I wanted to share with you. And I'll be honest, my VA was quite upset with him because I was supposed to get this episode out to him way earlier. I'm actually recording this on the 29th of December, so my apologies if this episode reaches you guys a bit late. But I really took some time in terms of what I'm going to share with you. What are the key lessons? But I think most importantly, no matter where you are in your life right now, whether you're a professional player or amateur player, where you're a mom, you're a dad, you're a coach, or you work in the corporate space, and you're not happy with 2025, that's okay. The focus shouldn't be on the past. The focus should be on the future in terms of what will you do next? What decision will you make today to become a better version of yourself in the future? What decision will you make today to develop better habits? What decision will you make today to inspire those around you? But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and really looking forward to get some feedback. Thanks for taking the time for watching and listening. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Have a blessed end to 2025. And I would just like to wish everybody an unbelievable new year lying ahead. And once again, thank you for your support. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you're listening and watching. And please, any feedback will be helpful. That's me, Coach G. Wish you guys an unbelievable day or evening, wherever you are in the world. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.